Nigeria's June inflation reported at 22.79% on Tuesday by the Statistics Office has been met with skepticism by some economists, analysts, and Nigerians in the street. However, the Bureau of Statistics have defended the inflation figure, stating that it reflects the period of data collection, which ended mid-June and not the full month under review. Reading the tea leaves of the June inflation report for me now is Abdulqudus Isiaka. He is the chief economist at ProShare Nigeria. Thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me. But maybe before we proceed, I would like to say that I'm a senior economist at ProShare. Before I get a raise.
Thank you. You'll get the raise. We all need it right now with inflation and the way exchange rate, everything is going. You need to get that. Thank you for that, Abdulqudus. The headline figure was 22.79%. Some analysts says that's unrealistic. What do you make of it at ProShare?
Okay, so thank you once again for having me. I think the reason why that the numbers published by the National Bureau of Statistics have attracted so much criticisms is a particular statement made by the NBS itself. It was actually, made on the social media handle of the Bureau. And it suggests that only 2 weeks of data was collected in the monthly survey. And the question we're asking is why we should have a 2-week survey, especially covering only the first 2 weeks of the month. If you think about it well, the VAT on diesel, the reintroduction of VAT on diesel, also a number of other announcements that would have implications for inflation were made in the second half of the month. There would have been no problem if you had intermittent surveys, perhaps in the first and third week, or the second and fourth week in the month. But if a survey that covers just the first 2 weeks in the month is obviously not going to be representative. Now, another issue is we believe, however, that, even in that circumstance, we should see a lot more, acceleration in price growth, right? Because you can't explain how a PMS subsidy removal, naira devaluation, import duties, and all of these, pronouncements and policy actions would have only a 38 basis point jump compared to the previous month of May, up from, of course, 22.41%, as you rightly mentioned. Now, if you think about it again, we had core inflation on a month-on-month basis declining. That is very questionable. And so it raises, again, some of the pre-existing methodological questions we've been asking about the MBS and how it computes its CPI report on a monthly basis. Now, if you recall, we've been talking about this basket of, items that are surveyed. It actually has a 740 goods and services item basket that is surveyed from month to month. And, that particular basket is supposed to be renewed after every 5 years. Now, that hasn't been done in the last 20 years. So we have a 20-year basket. Apart from that, you also have a situation where we've had 2 major recessions in 2016 and 2020, changing fundamental, patterns in terms of consumption and spending. And we think that this should be reflected. As a matter of fact, independent estimates of inflation are around 40 to 45%, are closer to 45% than even 40%. And so we can't afford to have official data that is questionable. We can't afford, we can look at what happened in China. We can look at what happened in Argentina, most especially in 2013, where it was found out that they had been managing their inflation data. They had been under-reporting their inflation data as far back as 2007. That had, ripple effects on perception, investor confidence. The likes of The Economist stopped publishing, official data from Argentina. We also had credit ratings tumbling. We also had investor confidence declining significantly. So we can't afford to toe that part. We're at this point where we're trying to court investors globally. I think we need to do a lot better in terms of how we conduct our surveys and in terms of exactly, how credible and how much integrity our data carry.
Okay, so that's interesting. But again, when you look at the palliatives, 8,000 naira, what's the expected inflationary consequences of this based on what Moody's just released today as far as the outlook on the full subsidy removal and exchange rate unification move?
So obviously, I mean, we need to appreciate the fact that even as skewed as the CPI report and as questionable, as controversial as the CPI report released by the MBS is, it still tells a tale in part of how much cost of living has become a crisis in the country, right? If you look at that month-on-month inflation, headline inflation, it came in at about 2.13%. That's the highest since 2016 May. And incidentally, back in 2016 May, it was these same suspects that were responsible for the spike in inflation, of course, on a month-on-month basis. So, you know, really, we're looking at a situation where, although back in 2016, what we had was, you know, over-regulation, where the government was trying to manage prices in also of PMS and FX, and that led to black market racketeering. But overall, what we can confirm is that we are in a cost of living crisis, and that, of course, is what necessitates all the conversations we've been having about palliatives and the likes. However, you know, we've been talking about the fact that 8,000 naira to 12 billion households over a 6-month period is not going to cut it. Apart from the fact that, you know, that's just $10 multiplied by 6, that's like $60 over 6 months. It does really nothing in terms of impact. I think we should be talking a lot more about some non-cash, you know, palliatives that wouldn't have an inflationary impact. Because right now we're talking about money supply, especially M2, at a record high around 64 trillion naira. If you think about the fact that we had GDP at about 202 trillion naira last year in 2022, then we may really be in for some inflationary trend, you know, if care isn't taken. So we think that, you know, we should be looking at a mass transit or a bus scheme, you know, something similar to what we find in the UK, where public-private partnership ensures that we are doing enough for the household in order to be able to, you know, in order for the household to be able to cope with increasing cost of living.
Okay, thank you so much, Abdulqudus Isiaka from ProShare. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it tonight. Have a pleasant evening.